Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, I got quite a few stories. Well, a few stories. It's like 7, I think. We got a story from Australia, from Texas, from Finland, from an icebreaker boat, from a bar, from Delaware, and one about fairies. So, if that sounds like your cup of tea, then definitely pull up a stump. Oh, and there's one about possibly a ghost pulling a prank on somebody, so definitely pull up a stump and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. I doubt many people will find this particularly spooky, but I've never found an explanation, and it was weird enough to live through. So I was going on a summer night walk with my best friend, as we often did. It was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. This was on the outer suburbs of Delaware. So we're passing by some old brick municipal building. There's no one around, and there's no vehicles to be seen except for those that are parked in driveways. And mid-conversation, we suddenly hear this droning wail. It just fills the air. It's like a tornado siren that got stuck on a single note. It's too loud to hear anything else, but not loud enough to hurt my ears. We both simultaneously fall to our knees for no apparent reason. It was an absolute compulsion, not a reaction. We didn't even have a chance to get spooked. And the sound seemed to be coming from nowhere in particular. I kept turning my head around just to try and give me a hint of a direction, and there was nothing. And then, just as quickly as we had dropped to our knees, it stops. We continue kneeling on the sidewalk, just looking around, completely bewildered. There were no dogs barking. There were no lights on in nearby houses. Everything was completely still and calm. We just walked the 2 miles back to my friend's house and we played Minecraft for the rest of the night. The sound was so bizarre, and I actually thought that it was in my head alone until I realized that my friend was looking around and was having the same experience. Now, we always like to read about ghosts and creepy stuff, which is why we were out to begin with, but this was a really odd thing that we encountered that night. So I had a run-in with something the downtown bar scene where I used to live called the Barfly. So I'm out for some drinks with a few pals, and I head over to the bar to get a Long Island. And there's this actual 10 out of 10, way out of my league, beautiful girl in a booth, and she waves me over. She has me sit next to her and asks me my name. I make small talk with her for a while, but she's the only one asking questions, and I randomly get tunnel vision. She's still talking to me, but I can't make out any words. The next thing I know, my friend is sitting next to me asking me why I went and sat down instead of with them. None of my friends saw her. They just saw me at a booth by myself, apparently just staring at the window. So this one time, I was camping deep in the woods, and right around where this took place, I was actually 150 yards from my camp. I was shooting my good old Lee infield. It's only me out there, and there's no lights or nothing. The gun is loud, of course, and I fire it once without ear protection. It's not so bad, my ears aren't ringing yet, and everything seems fine. So I had turned off my light, and I just put it on the rock that I was using as a table, and the flashlight slides off the rock. As I reached down to pick it back up, I heard a noise. It was a harmonica. I got instant goosebumps. It was in the opposite direction of my camp. It must be after midnight. There's definitely no one else out there. I made sure to check. Then, I realized that the tune of whoever was playing this tune sounded like Once Upon a Time in the West, like the harmonica part in it. And out of nowhere, it happens again. and it's getting closer. I keep trying to find my light, and I'm still freaking out. The harmonica keeps getting closer and closer, and it can't be less than 100 feet off. I find my flashlight and swing around and turn it on in all directions. I flicked in the direction that I think the harmonica is coming from. It stops, and the woods are normal. I don't see anything. And then the harmonica resumed playing, but further off this time. I just picked myself up and just went back to the camp as fast as I could go, or as fast as my dumb self can go in sandals. And I got back to camp white as a sheet apparently, but we never heard the harmonica again, and no one else heard it. So I don't know what the hell was going on. Maybe a ghost was playing a prank on me. So about 2 years ago, I was curious about how to attract fae spirits, so I asked some people what to do. And they told me that the fae like nice gardens. They also like gifts of butter and milk. So I ended up cultivating a little garden. It's mainly flowers, but it also has a few veggies in it too. I try to keep it as neat as I can, and I always leave out a little saucer with either butter or milk in it. I even thank the fairies with a little meditation or a prayer every day. Sometimes I notice that I feel watched when I'm working in the garden. It could be my imagination, but whatever. And then one night, it begins to storm. There's severe winds. I'm worried that my garden will get destroyed. I wake up the next day, and the wind from the storm has knocked over trees and power lines and everything. There's huge branches in the middle of the road. My backyard is a total wreck. Debris, leaves, sticks, everything everywhere. Except for the garden. It's totally untouched and pristine. There's no debris or anything in it whatsoever. I also grew the biggest cucumbers and peppers that I've ever grown in that garden. I stopped doing the milk and butter thing though because I started thinking it was I don't know. I thought I was imagining it, but I'm thinking now that I should have kept up with it. This is pretty mild, but it's the only thing that's sort of spooky that happened to me. It was 3 a.m. on a brisk autumn night in a quiet Finnish suburb. I decided to walk the family dog with my sister before heading to sleep. We keep it off the leash since the dog is very well trained and not aggressive, and it won't leave our vicinity anyways. So we get a few blocks from home, and the streetlights give us some good visibility. We're about to turn on a T-section. The dog hesitates for a few paces. Its head is glued to the left turn of the section. I think nothing of it. I encourage it to keep moving. The road is built for cars only, but a few dozen meters across, there's a sidewalk. It's obscured by planted firs from where we are. We make it past the turn, and the dog raises its back fur and furrows its nose. And I'm like, she never does this. What's wrong with the dog? And I'm starting to get a little spooked too because I don't see anything that's going on. We keep walking forward to see what's just past the firs. I get to the start of the sidewalk. There's a tall man in a high visibility vest and a hard hat just standing there under the streetlight, his back to us, completely unmoving, 10 meters away. The dog is full on snarling now. Its back is bowed and the fur is completely raised. It's baring its teeth. My stomach turns and I get an immense aura of dread around this person. Is it not just some guy? I ask myself. I try to ask, is everything alright? But the words get stuck in my throat. I just get the feeling that I should leave. I glance back at my sister, who stayed behind us, and I motion her to follow us and leave. Slowly, we back out, the dog following my example without commands. I turn around and walk away with a hurried step. I glance once more at the guy, and he's still there, just unmoving. This was the weirdest encounter in my life so far. It felt like some truly paranormal stuff. Sometimes I internally laugh at the thought of this being some random dude who had just been chilling outside, but that feeling I had is something else. It's 3 a.m. and there's no construction sites that were anywhere close. Why the high visibility vest and hard hat? Our dog, who's always excited to see random people and who always wants pets. She was just ready to go, ready to fight, and then ready to run as soon as I wanted to leave. What do you think the encounter was? Keep in mind that this happened during the Cold War, when tensions and paranoia ran really high. My dad was part of the Australian Navy, and he and a bunch of others were sent to America as part of some Navy initiative. He did engineering work, which he said that he couldn't tell me about for legal reasons. During this initiative, he worked frequently with the Coast Guard, and one day they call him up. Apparently, there's an icebreaker that they hadn't heard from in quite a while. It was still broadcasting its location and everything, it just hadn't moved in a long time. And they ask him if he wants to come and check it out. He says sure and tags along. So 2 hours later, they reach the icebreaker's location. It was a smaller vessel, not like the heavier ones required for things like the McMurdo station, but it was still large enough to break the ice. And it had a sizable crew too, if I'm not mistaken. But most of the crew were missing. My dad was let on board. He goes down to the engine room. He sorts out some stuff. I don't know what he did. I'm not an engineer myself. The engines are back up and running, and Dad goes back up top. He asks around, curious to know what happened. But the crew that are left are giving conflicting accounts. Some of them said it was bears. Some of them said it was wolves. But while they don't agree on the specifics, they do agree that most of the crew was, quote, taken. He said, and I quote, most of these fellows were scared out of their minds, and they had every right to be. They had their mates taken by something that was on the ice, but they seemed to have no real clue as to what it actually was. My dad is eventually told to get back onto the Coast Guard vessel, and they shove off. Back at the base, my dad is approached by his commanding officer and basically told to keep his mouth shut. He still has no idea what the hell happened out there. He's still got Defense Force ties, but the event is still a mystery to everybody involved. When I was 17, I went out to the middle of the bush to this party. There were lots of people just chilling around a big fire and getting drunk off cask wine, or goon as we call it, and some of us were just getting stoned. I'm standing on one side of the fire with my mates and my little brother. He was about 15 at the time. On the other side of the fire was a crew of Aboriginals, and for some reason they were acting super shifty. Now, this crew of guys, usually they just get drunk and pass out, but they weren't doing that this time. So I decided to just kind of blow it off and try to enjoy myself. They all end up leaving really early, and usually these guys are the last to leave the parties. One of them that I know comes up to me, and he asks me how I'm getting home that night. And I say, I'm probably just gonna walk, to be honest. He gives me a weird look, and he puts his hand on my shoulder and says, try to get a lift, bruh. And then he walks away. And I think, righto, that was weird. So we stay at the party until about 1 or 2 a.m. And then the vibe gets really weird, and me and my brother decide that we should leave. We end up taking this bush track on our way home, since we only lived like a half an hour or so a walk away, so it was no big deal. But for some reason, it was really eerie, really quiet. There was no birds or no noise or anything. And I hear rustling in the bushes next to us. We look over and we see this big jet black humanoid figure. It has these shiny black eyes that we can see even though its body is pitch black. Me and my brother run away like a dog that was just shot in the butt. And we don't dare look back, but we eventually run out of steam and we have to walk because we're so tired and out of breath. And we pass roadkill, which at first we think is no big deal. And then we look again and see that it's a kangaroo that has no head. And my brother says, "Righto, let's get the hell out of here." And we keep kind of power walking or just going as fast as we can. We're just trying to get out of this area, trying to get home. And we passed by another beheaded kangaroo. We eventually get home out of breath and sweating, and we just go straight to bed without even talking about it. The following week at school, I see the Aboriginal lad that talked to me at the party. I say, "Hey mate, what was the deal the other night?" And he just says, "That's the Shadow Man's business, bro." And he gives me this look that tells me never to talk about it ever again. I want to tell you about the Longmen of Tawakoni. So we always visit my grandma and parents at least once a month. They live out in Lake Tawakoni in East Texas. This place is in the middle of nowhere. It's just pastures and lakes. And by the way, the lakes are filling up really good this year, almost 6 feet above average. So me, my brother, and his girlfriend go camping because we're tired of just doing family stuff. It's the equivalent of staking a tent in the middle of a barren field because there's no woods out here. So we end up doing what everybody in Texas does when they go camping, and we all get drunk off our ass and pass out. I wake up early with a hangover. I think it was about 4:30 a.m. or so, going off my old phone. So I leave the tent to go take a pee. I see this man walking across the field. And this isn't really a big deal, I think, because it's probably just a hunter. And then, when I'm standing there taking a pee, it stops when it sees me. It gives me this really awkward-looking wave, as if its arm was stiff, like it put its arm over its head and just waved it kind of back and forth. It was really weird. I just kind of wave back and think, this is weird, but okay, he's being friendly. So the guy keeps standing there, waving. I crawl back into the tent and I wake up my brother. I couldn't have been in the tent more than 10 seconds, since all I did was give a boot to his side. I stepped back outside and, dear Lord, this thing cleared 600 yards in 10 seconds. And now it's just standing there, looking at me. A chill runs down my back and my hair stands up on end. I know from previous experience out here that this is not good at all. I tell my brother to grab his gun. That woke him up. He comes out with his rifle. I tell him to aim at that thing. The thing, again, is just standing there. I tell his girlfriend to go to the truck. Both of them are still probably drunk, but they oblige. I take the rifle and I keep it trained on that thing. And then I know why its arms were so stiff. They seemed to unfold. When it was waving them, it had its arms bent up to its shoulder. This thing had to have 6-foot-long arms. It was easily one of the scariest things I've ever seen. And then it stopped slouching, and it was easily 8 feet tall. This is going off the distance of about 450 yards, so I could be off a little. But then it lets out this most guttural, banshee-like screech I've ever heard. It was just a terrible roar came from this thing. And then its jaw descends as if it unhinged it or something. So I take a pot shot at it, and it screeches, and then turns onto all fours and folds its arms back up and hightails it away from us. I don't know, we came back to the campsite later that afternoon with our shotgun filled with buckshot and an AR-15, just in case. The tent was obviously shredded, as you would expect. Our food was gone. We tracked the garbage trail towards the swamp line, and then we see a ripped apart muskrat hanging from a shrub. We both decide to call it quits because we're obviously in something else's territory. I can't even properly describe what we saw. It looked like a bat thing. I don't know, it was so disproportionate. Its arms and legs were like, seriously, it unfolded its arms like a praying mantis, and it had these really bony fingers. My brother thinks it wasn't a chupacabra, but I don't know. It kind of reminds me of a skinwalker. So, what did you think of those stories? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. For me, it was probably the icebreaker one and the fairy garden one. Just kind of had like a little bit of a wholesome feel to it. The spookiest one, I think, was probably the one from Texas, or the Shadow Man from Australia. I actually have a story about shadow people from Australia, so keep an eye out for that one whenever it comes out. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you didn't mind the little bit of background noise that's in the video right now, because it is so humid here. You know, she's a rough time when you're trying to mop the floor and end up just sweating to death instead. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching.